the asbestos issue is not a thing of the past. It continues to this day.
We want to end this man-made disaster.
So let's ban asbestos.
Before anything else, I would like to thank ADAO for inviting me and for allowing me the opportunity to speak about my subject, asbestos in Europe. And also, I would like to thank you, the audience, for lasting this long. I see you are all still here. And also, I would like to say hi to Michael Bradley. Michael, I am sorry that you are not here, but in a sense you are here. You are here in our hearts. So, about asbestos. I am sorry to say that asbestos, the modern use of asbestos, is in a sense a European invention. It was, after all, the Austrian inventor Ludwig Hartschek who discovered modern uses of asbestos, like asbestos cement and asbestos roofing and so on, around the 1900s. And in the decades after the Second World War, his discovery became a huge industry in Europe, and I would say almost nowhere more so than in my own country, the Netherlands. We have had a huge industry of producing asbestos roofing, asbestos tiles, asbestos textiles. We are one of the worst hit countries in the world in terms of mesothelioma incidents, and we don't even have asbestos mines. Go figure. You can see something here, the blue line. Actually, I have a bit of spots in front of my eyes because of the strong lights over there. Yes. I hope you can see it. The blue line is Europe, and you can see we are by far and away the largest importers and consumers of asbestos. According to the United States Geological Survey, European countries have consumed some 44 million tons of asbestos between 1920 and 2011. That is not even including Russia or the USSR former satellite countries. 44 million tons is roughly a quarter of the global asbestos consumption. Now, some of this was exported outside of Europe, but likely most of it, the larger part, is still present. 44 million tons. It's a hard figure to visualize. However, when you define Europe as including Russia and the Russian satellite countries, then it's actually over half the global consumption, only for Europe. We are talking staggering amounts. 100 million tons and 52% of global consumption. I tried to visualize this at home, what that would mean. And I came up with this actually. If you were to put all of that into trucks of 10 meters long, carrying 10 tons each, and if you were to put those 10 million trucks in a lineup, nose to tail, they would make a line 2.5 times the circumference of the Earth. And that is only in itself 40,000 kilometers. And all of that has been consumed by Europe. It's a hell of a legacy. Some European countries, notably England, Denmark, and my own country, the Netherlands, have introduced partial asbestos bans in the 80s and 90s. These bans were gradually expanded. But this token legislation was very poorly enforced, ignored really, even by the labor inspectors. Nowadays, they will freely admit that this was so. Governments everywhere turned a blind eye to asbestos dangers. They were simply too profitable. There was too much money being made with asbestos. Employment was king, and asbestos provided very good employment. To sum up the basic situation of those years across Europe, we all knew about the dangers of asbestos, and nobody really did a damn thing that really amounted to anything. And now here is where the European Union comes in. Now, normally I'm not particularly a fan of the European Union, but when it comes to asbestos, I'll say yay, bravo. The big change came in 1999, when the European Union banned the import and use of asbestos in a directive effective as of 2005. You see it there. This directive was achieved over a number of years and by the hard and persistent work of many, with activists and labor unions in particularly driving forces. It would not have been achieved without them, I'm sure of that. The EU cited the globally recognized facts. All asbestos is dangerous. There is no safe limit. It was disputed, but the EU demanded that everybody recognize this. All asbestos is dangerous. There is no safe limit. The directive forced all the member states to implement their own asbestos bans in their own countries. And I do mean exactly that, forced. For without the intervention of the European Union, I think it highly likely that asbestos legislation would still amount to nothing much. And consider carefully what that would mean towards the progress of our own fight to ban asbestos if the European asbestos ban would not exist. It would be a huge setback for all of us. In 2006, the European Commission launched an asbestos awareness campaign to help prevent asbestos exposure across the entire Union, as it was then. Its motto was, "Asbestos is deadly serious, prevent exposure." It proved to be quite successful, and it has helped many asbestos victims organizations to spread the news and to raise awareness in their communities. Nowadays, nearly 10 years later, the European asbestos ban is seen in the light of common sense. Well, of course asbestos is banned, everyone will say. And it's actually quite surprising to us Europeans that asbestos is not yet banned in the United States. The country, the very country that we look up to as a leader in these matters. Oh, goodness. I'll hurry up, sorry. So, over the past few years, several Central and East European countries have joined the European Union. As new member states, they too will have to implement the European asbestos ban. It's hard going though, because this is basically their reaction.
Oh my goodness.
They're still under the influence of Russia. Only last year, the European Federation of Building and Woodworkers published a report that concluded that recognition of asbestos diseases, treatment and compensation in these countries is virtually unheard of. So we should not forget about these countries. Indeed, we have our work cut out for us. Now, I'll skip a few things. And I'll go on to this. Oh, the European asbestos epidemic. Really, I should say something. The Arlington Cemetery holds place for 400,000 military personnel. 400,000 graves, that would not be enough to offer a place to all of the European asbestos victims that are expected. Imagine, and it's the largest cemetery by far in the world, and it is not large enough. So I'll just pause with this. The European Parliament's asbestos report, only last year. In this very interesting report, which you can find online, the European Commission is urged to make asbestos screening in buildings mandatory and also to provide a building registration and make that mandatory. It calls on the European Union and all the member states to start action plans for asbestos removal across Europe in public buildings by 2028. Yep. This was a new trick I learned. It requires to set minimum training requirements and qualifications for employees. So far only in the construction sector, but still it's a good beginning. For after all, how can you expect employees to work carefully with asbestos when they can't recognize it if it's held in front of their faces? Recognizing, or at least suspecting asbestos is very important in the workplace. There's more good news. The European Parliament wants to work together with international organizations. It wants to define the asbestos market as a toxic trade. It wants to harmonize standards and procedures to identify, to notify, recognize, and compensate for asbestos-related diseases, to share best medical practices. And the whole idea is really to share, to teach, to reach out to everybody, basically with the idea that I myself have learned from ADAO, sharing makes us stronger. Not sharing makes us victims, and asbestos victims all over again. And that is completely unnecessary. We should share, and that makes us stronger. There is one call that I find particularly worth mentioning that you can find in this European Parliament's asbestos report, and that is a call for justice. Well, I'm a jurist, you must understand that. A call for offenders to be prosecuted and published, and for any obstacles to such actions to be removed from national laws. Because what we need is not only a cure for past exposures, we also need an effective deterrent to new exposures. So, to sum it up, the essence of what the European Union presently stands for is to engage in a global asbestos ban and to strive to achieve exactly that. So, if those aren't positive words to wrap the speech up with, I just don't know. So perhaps you would like to stand up with me and to give this American phrase a shout out. Ban asbestos. Ban asbestos.